Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to I'm Over It, the podcast where we talk all things menopause, perimenopause, and everything in between. Today we're talking about something super sexy, protein. Yeah, I said sexy. Because nothing turns me on these days like hitting my daily macros and not feeling like a deflated balloon in leggings. When I hit my 50s, my metabolism hit retirement. And apparently my muscle mass went on permanent vacation too. So I brought in a pro trainer and nutrition expert, Angela Holmes, who's going to break down why protein is so important for our bodies as we age. We're talking how much protein we actually need, what it does for mood, muscle, and metabolism, why we need to stop being scared of lifting a damn dumbbell, and how to get all that goodness in without choking down another chalky shake. Grab your protein, your caffeine, something cool to drink, and those bye-bye arms, that loose skin under your arms that keeps waving long after you've stopped. And let's get into it. Okay, Angela, I've got to start with the basics. Why the hell do we need so much protein all of a sudden?
Thanks, Emily. It's not all a sudden. This really starts when we're young. This starts when you're like 10 years old. Protein is such an important part of a lot of different functions in our body, but the reason why there's so much hype about it after 40 is because what starts to happen hormonally is a downstream effect of years and years of other things. When you hit 40, you're faced with this reality of the decisions you made before. After 40, estrogen starts to fluctuate. It doesn't start just perimenopause and menopause. Our hormones don't just decline. First, they become chaotic. And estrogen isn't just a reproductive hormone. It helps protect muscle. So as estrogen drops, we naturally lose muscle faster, which is called sarcopenia. And then muscle, also being our metabolic engine, it burns more calories at rest than fat does. It's a blood sugar regulator, and it's our strength reserve. It doesn't just disappear overnight. It becomes chaotic first, and then it lowers overall. And we become less responsive to both protein and exercise. And that's why we're being faced with it now, and why there's so much hype around perimenopause and menopause and the need for protein.
Absolutely. And you're right about the chaos and so much information out there.
Mm-hmm.
How can we spice up our protein intake without feeling like we're training for a fitness competition?
Well, like the way I like,
Unless they really want to.
right, yeah, right. We're not all bodybuilders, and there's a really big push in the fitness industry to promote more bodybuilding lifestyles because bodybuilders are really good at one thing, and that is building muscle. It is a lot harder than people think it is to build muscle. I always like to put polls in my social media about what do you think's harder, building muscle or losing body fat? And honestly, I think it's kind of a tie.
Okay.
Protein doesn't need to look like gym food. I actually don't prefer to use protein powders or things like that as a source of protein because we need to be more satiated. So we want as much of our protein to come from whole food sources. We also want a really complete amino acid profile. Protein is made up of amino acids. It's like the building blocks of protein. And when we're talking about hitting our 40s and needing this more, it's because we actually need more protein signaling in our body. And protein signals something called muscle protein synthesis, which is what is needed to build and preserve muscle tissue. And we really need a certain amount for our body type in order to build or preserve the tissue we have. So when you say, how do we spice it up? I want to see you eating really whole foods. I want to see Greek yogurt with berries and seeds. I want to see eggs with some cheese and herbs. I want to see cottage cheese used creatively. And there's a lot of cottage cheese haters out there, but you can blend it and put it in soups. You can use it instead of sour cream. You can make cheesecakes out of it. You can add lentils and beans to your sauces or other things, salmon tacos, shrimp bowls. Like, it doesn't have to be gym food, chalky, dry protein powder, or even just chicken breast.
And that's what a lot of people fall into is they think that's what they have to eat. But in reality, you're right, there's so many different recipes and things that you can do with cottage cheese, for instance, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
a good protein.
And social media is such a wonderful place now for that. Like, oftentimes clients will come to me, do you have any ideas for this? You know what? I am not a recipe person, but there is a world of resources out there. All you have to do is type in high protein recipes and you will get a slew of like way more information than you know what to do with.
Amazing. Can you explain how the protein helps with, I call it my apron belly situation and overall energy?
Yeah. It's a much bigger picture. If we look at the apron belly like a side effect, a downstream effect, as I would call it, when we're looking at things like apron belly and energy, we have to look at the fact that as we lose muscle, our metabolism changes. As we lose muscle, as we age, and after a certain point, I would say 35 to 40, the year is not concrete, but we start to lose 1% of our muscle mass every year. And that's a
Yikes.
big accumulation. If you didn't, invest into the bank of your muscle really well ahead of time, then you're looking at like skinny fat or really low muscle tone, and then the buildup of adipose tissue or fat. And when we're looking at the function of protein and with the body in regards to gaining weight, especially in our belly, there's a few things that are happening. We're losing muscle mass because we don't have enough protein signaling in our body to preserve or build that lean tissue. We're not doing any kind of resistance training to either maintain what we have, even if it's not very much, or build it, which again, if you're losing protein signaling, is also difficult. The lower our muscle mass becomes, the less efficient we are at moving and disposing of glucose. So that means we store carbohydrates. We become less efficient at moving those carbs and using them for fuel and energy. With that comes the inability to regulate blood sugar. So we're getting crashes and cravings. And then with those
Yep.
crashes and cravings and extreme dips, we're also talking about the increase in cortisol, because cortisol is a stress hormone. So we need it. Cortisol is a necessary thing. But when we are constantly crashing our blood sugar and our blood sugar is not stable, then cortisol becomes irregular, and that's what starts to lead to more chronic long-term issues. When we have issues with cortisol and high stress, we start to get into things called HPA axis dysfunction, so hypothalamus pituitary adrenal dysfunction, and that's where you get into thyroid issues and adrenal fatigue, and there's a big huge downstream effect to that. So when it comes to apron belly, it's not a one thing. It's that we have lost muscle mass, which has been a driver for storing fat. And estrogen prefers to store fat around the belly because it's a protective mechanism. Estrogen likes to store fat around the belly because it's our body's signal to the world that it's trying to build up a layer of protection between us and it. Isn't that crazy?
It is insane. And I have quite a bit of protection happening. I was just saying, I mean, I've always been curvy, but just in the last couple of years, I've just noticed that curviness, that fat pockets have changed and
Mm.
shifted where they sat up a little higher or just sat differently on the body because
Mm-hmm.
clothing size wise, I find I'm still the same size that I've been for quite a few years, but it just fits differently.
And
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
largely from a loss of muscle tone, and that makes some of it difficult, right? Because when we talk to women and
Yep.
they want a solution, before it was when we were in our 20s and 30s, it was maybe just lose a couple pounds, but now we need to build a new
Yeah.
body, and that's a way bigger project than just reducing our calories a little bit and watching it go away.
Exactly. And it becomes very, very overwhelming. So that's why it's going to kind of lead into how many grams of protein should we be aiming for per day?
There's a little bit of a caveat to this because, for instance, when I work with clients one-on-one, the first 6 weeks of my programming with them is all focused on optimizing digestion, mastering the unsexy things, so sleeping, consistent food, consistent fueling, and workouts. But when it comes
Hmm.
to digestion and protein, a really overlooked thing is throwing this blanket statement number out there to women. You need this much, and
Yep.
not having any idea how their body's going to respond to it. And I don't mean something bad's going to happen, but a lot of women who come into perimenopause and menopause, or women in general, I would say 98% of the women I work with have bloating and digestive issues and
Hmm.
regularly don't eliminate well. So we got a lot of constipated, bloated women. And then we're telling them, eat more protein.
Just
And they're
jam
getting
pack that all in there.
exactly. And because we're overwhelmed and we're tired, we're often reaching for things like processed forms of protein, so protein bars
Yeah.
and protein shakes, and nothing is moving through. And so, as much as protein, and I know this podcast is all about protein, but as much as that's really important, we also can't lose sight of fiber. When it comes to protein, we
Right.
need zero point 0.7 to a gram per pound of goal of your total body weight.
Hmm.
Most women need between, like 90 to 150 grams a day. The average female weighs 150 pounds. So we
Yep.
need we need around that amount. But if I have someone coming in with a ton of bloating and indigestion, I might not put it right up to that amount right away. In some cases, these women have indigestion because they are not eating balanced meals. Like they don't know what that looks like, or it's overwhelming and they're busy, and prioritizing a balanced plate isn't something that they can feel that they can manage on their own. Sometimes it's
Right.
just about getting that right. Let's just
Yeah.
get you on a meal plan, follow this, don't deviate, just follow this and see how good you're going to feel once you just focus on eating enough. Because if we don't eat enough, our digestion slows down. And so that can be part of the cause of some of
The
these
problem.
bowel movement issues when we're
Hmm.
bloated and constipated. But via like just throwing a number out there, I would say you should try to get between zero point 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of your body weight.
In the protein.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
protein. And the fiber, you're right. I was gonna say that's super shitty. A lot of us do have that issue.
It
Like I
is.
said, with the bloat and just changes in your body, 2 best feelings in life are coming and going, literally.
Fiber also plays a part in the fact that it's like little scrubbers for our colon and our gut. It helps remove excess hormones. So if we are dealing with
Mhm.
hormonal imbalances as well, a lot of that disposal comes through bowel movement. So if we're not properly detoxing, we don't have open detox pathways, it's going
Yeah.
to affect everything. I mean, don't get me started on the liver and what that does for everything.
You touched a little bit when hitting the goals and what that looks like for someone who's busy and juggling life and work. There is a way to do it. A lot of times, women especially feel very overwhelmed on what that looks like. Can you give a quick little a day of hitting those that the fiber and protein goals, what that would look
Sure.
like for someone who's busy and on the go?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would recommend is when we first wake up in the morning. Now, there's a lot of people who are going to be like, eat within 30 minutes, or you're going to start to crash or lose muscle, or your metabolism is going to slow down. I don't think that that's as true as some people think it is. But I do think
Mhm.
that we go too long without eating, and then we start to face other issues. I have majority of my clients eating 75% of their food in the first like 2/3 of the day. We really want to front load those calories and use them
Mhm.
when we need them. So I like to start the morning off with at least 30 to 35 grams of protein. We need at least 15 to initiate muscle protein synthesis. So think of that as like your bare
Okay.
minimum, 15 grams of
Okay.
protein, but I would like you closer to 30. So
Right.
this could be Greek yogurt with some seeds. You could put, if
Mhm.
you wanted to boost that up a little bit, you could put a scoop of protein powder in your Greek yogurt.
Mhm.
I prefer savory breakfast. So I'm going to have 2 eggs with some egg whites, some sourdough toast, some berries, because we get the fiber in there too, and some like spinach greens or something like that. So those
Yeah.
are kind of two of my go-to breakfasts. You can also do like an overnight oat. So you can put Greek yogurt and protein powder in oats and put it in the fridge, a tablespoon of chia seed, and let it sit overnight, and with some fruit in there. And that
Mhm.
way you can just grab it as you go.
That's one of my favorites too.
Yeah,
I do
works pretty
love the
good.
overnight oats. My niece over Christmas, she's 10, and she was hungry for breakfast, so I gave her a bowl of it and she loved it.
I think making sure you're satiated, full of protein and fiber first thing in the morning is super important.
Well,
So
that's
that would be an
great.
example of
Now,
breakfast. And then lunch,
yep.
I would say a chicken breast, a can of tuna. Those it can be really simple. We don't have to
Yeah.
overcomplicate it. Lunch meat. As much as I would like to not have as much processed food with
Right.
nitrates and things like that in it, it's a lot better, in my opinion, than having a protein bar. Have some lunch meat and some carrot sticks and some other veggie on the side, some fruit for some fiber, things like that. So that would be a great lunch go to.
Those are doable.
And there's so many more convenient food options. I really like Bone Brew House, and it's a prepackaged things of bone broth that's powdered. You can put it in a cup of hot water, add some salt, and sip on it. That's a great way to have a cozy lunch on the go. A lot of moms
Mhm.
who are in hockey arenas get a box
Oh,
of these and take them with you. That way you can have a little bit of something and stay warm.
that's great. That's a great tip.
A snack would be cottage cheese if you can tolerate that. There are some more minimalist protein bars that I don't mind. RX bar is pretty good because there's only 3 or 4 ingredients in there, dates and
Okay.
egg whites and some nuts. But you want to think of every meal you have, just have protein, fat, and a carb with it. Keep it
Okay.
Try not to overcomplicate it. And then dinner, I love to have a leaner option for protein, and I pick a fattier option for protein in the day. And I usually have my leaner protein at lunchtime because it
Mhm.
feels better to not have more heaviness in my guts. Fat will slow down digestion. It's great for satiation. We
Right.
absolutely need it, but I like to put it in spots strategically in the day. And then at dinner, I really love having something like a roast that I put in the crock pot and left it. Put it in the morning and
Mm,
forget about it. Blade roast and a whole chicken that you put in the crock pot, something like that. That's my savior for dinner because that tends to be the busiest time of the day, and I don't have a lot
yes.
of time. You don't have a lot of turnaround time to actually sit at a counter and cut things.
I think that's a lot of women. They're busy work, busy moms, busy life, and keeping things simple, making goals a doable goal.
And I say again, I prefer to try not to use protein powder because I feel better with more whole foods, especially if you're
Yeah.
someone who is hungry, who has a big appetite. You want to use real food as much as you can. Don't waste
Yeah.
your calories on a 200-calorie bar that's the size of four of your fingers. If you could be eating a whole piece of chicken and like a big meal that fills you up and feels good.
Those 3 meals sound very doable. There's definitely some things in there that I do already eat, which is great, so it's not like you're starting from scratch a whole different food menu for yourself. But what about when you're traveling or you're going out on a hot date or something, or an event where you can't weigh your food or choose the amount of the proper proteins or what you might need?
Yeah.
What do you usually recommend?
Well, what I would recommend is to use your hand as a tracking system. A lot of times when you've been tracking for a while, you can get a pretty good idea of how much something is, how much
Yep.
protein is in a chicken breast, how much protein just based on looking at it. But I like to tell my clients, use your hand as a standard for measurement. So use your palm as the size of the protein, not your fingers, just the meaty
Okay.
part of your palm. And think, okay, that's probably a 4 to 6. I have really big hands, so it's probably more like 8 with my hands, but probably around 4 to 6 ounces of a
Okay.
protein choice. My thumb will be the amount of added fat. Dietary fat's in everything. We don't really have to worry too much about it,
Mhm.
especially if you're eating out because fat makes everything taste good. So if you go to a
Uh-huh.
restaurant, you can guarantee that if you're tracking your food and you want to be mindful, count 2 to 4 extra tablespoons of oil on your food.
Yeah.
Um, Fat's the most calorically dense macronutrient too, so it's going to add up really quickly. So if you're eating out, don't worry about fat because it's going to be there. And then as far as
Yeah.
the carb goes, depending on your goals, if you're trying to reduce your calories, go for about half the size of your palm or a fist size. If you close up
Okay.
your fist, look at that. And if you're more in the mindset of I'm lean and I'm just trying to build some muscle, then go for 2 fistfuls.
Okay.
Use that as your guide to give you visible metrics. And the same with veggies. I would go 2 fistfuls of veggies. Make sure you're getting your fiber in at your meals too.
That's great because I think a lot of times you're dissuaded from going to things 'cause you're like, "How am I gonna not ruin what I've got going on now?"
Yeah. You're an adult. You can bring you can bring hard boiled eggs, you can bring those prepackaged bone broth packets, you can pack a shake. At least have it with the meal if the meal is really going to be devoid of something. Have it before you go in. If there's a ton of tempting
Yeah.
stuff, have it before you go in so that you're already a little bit satiated, not starving, going into
Yes.
those places where there might not be optimal food choices for you.
And then you're not starving and overeating the bad stuff.
Yeah.
What do you find are, the biggest mistakes women make when they think that they're eating enough, but they actually aren't of protein?
The biggest mistakes I see is women who are under eating it earlier in the day, and then when they get to the end of the day, they're starving. As soon as the quiet comes. Most people tell me it's as soon as their kids go to bed, and then they just lock the cupboards. I can't, like, control myself. I'm so hungry.
Mhm.
Or they'd snack mindlessly. And I think that's the other thing too, is a lot of women are eating a lot more than they think they are because they're not thinking about the fact that they're eating a bunch of this there and a few nuts here and the
Mhm.
leftovers from my kids' food. When we don't intentionally plan to feed ourselves, our
Yeah.
body and our brain are really good at being tricky. Not tricky, they're trying to save our lives. Subconsciously eating when we don't even think we are. And I do this
Mhm.
100%. This isn't a judgment on anybody because I am the quickest person to eat my kids' leftovers because I like
Yeah.
what I cook them. I think it's a mindset of, hey, you're worthy of feeding yourself, of making sure you are provided for just as much as your kids. I know we would all die for our kids, but
Yeah.
you have to put your oxygen mask on so that you can serve them better and be the person that you want to be. Make sure you are getting food in, especially first thing in the morning. That would be one of the mistakes I see. Skipping breakfast.
So I hear a lot of people say the pyramid, you're eating the upside down pyramid,
Yeah.
eating, the most in the morning, And as you go through the day, and your last meal of the day should be a lighter one, minus what you explained earlier about you like to save your savory meat for your dinner time instead of lunch.
Yeah, and it's not magical timing. We want it to be balanced. The body is going to keep track most of all of your calories in the whole day. Yes, we want to eat throughout the day because it's going to give you energy, especially if you're working out. You really need to prioritize food and nutrition around that workout window, the before and the after. Because if you're trying to build muscle, which is why we're eating protein and focusing on this, you want to make the most out of that workout session. And it's so important to allocate protein, carbs, and fat in the right amount around your workout time and
Yeah.
eat the food when you need the energy. You don't need the energy of all those calories when you're sitting down to watch Netflix. You really need them when you're working, when you're playing with your kids, when you're doing your workout, when you're walking your dog.
Well, my favorite is that energy when I am sitting and watching Netflix, but
Yes, it is so nice.
isn't it? Well, this rolls naturally then into food tracking and exercise. Food tracking is the bane of my existence. I have found some apps you can take a picture of, and I've tried it over the years. I think bring it up because there's probably other women that feel the same way. I don't know how to not hate that so much. It's not
Mm.
really that big of a deal. I'm going to throw this back to you about talk about food tracking and exercise.
This is so common. You're definitely not alone. Some of my clients still struggle with this mindset. Part of their responsibility is tracking their food. It doesn't have to be a lifelong prescription, but it definitely needs to be a part of your life for a significant amount of time until you can start to have an understanding of how much food your body needs. I'm going to give a little bit of the pre-frame of why it's so important, and then we'll kind of
Hmm.
backtrack and talk about if you absolutely cannot track, what would you do? Why it's so important is because it's data. Even on our best of days, we're are multitasking, overburdened, tired. I don't know very many women that are not burnt out and tired. And
Hmm.
so adding tracking can tend to be one more thing. I can't do this. This is just, it's like getting another dog. Why would we do this to our life right now? But it is really relevant data if you have a goal, whether it is fat loss or just you're a small person but you want to build muscle. We need to know where you're at. And because our subconscious is so good at making sure we get food, more often than not, women are eating more than they think they are. And that's
Yeah.
part of the problem. We've kind of gotten stuck in this social media realm of everyone's not eating enough, and that's why we're storing fat. But really, yes, that is a problem. And that's the problem I struggle with. It's just in sneaky, really calorically dense ways they're not accounting for. Once you start to really count and track things, you realize a tablespoon of peanut butter is actually not very much food. It's a good reality check for women. It takes some discipline, but there are ways to make it simpler. My favorite way is
Hmm.
to help clients develop a meal plan. They tell me the foods they like and they don't like. I partition the food throughout their day. And so, really, they
Oh,
enter it
wow.
into their phone once. They'll enter one day and then copy and paste it to the next day. After about a week of doing that, you pretty much memorize, oh, I'm eating 130 grams of chicken breast and 200 grams of rice. You don't even really think about it anymore. That's the key to being successful, is to get it to a point where it doesn't take up one more part of your brain. Because even if someone who's a veteran of it, I've done it forever, it's still a distraction. It's still me on
Yeah.
my phone. It's still something in the back of my head of, did you write that down? And I don't really want to live like that unless I was prepping for a bodybuilding show or something, which I don't plan on
Hmm.
doing. So I say that the more you can set it and forget it, follow a meal plan, put it in your phone, make small adjustments if you need to, or if you ran out of
Hmm.
something as you go, and then just put it on a repetition. You're going to be so much more
Okay.
consistent than aimlessly tracking and getting to the day and thinking, shoot, I'm way off. I have to eat 100 grams of protein before I go to bed. While that's better than not eating it at all, it's also not going to be really helpful for your digestion.
Right. Definitely something to think about. It's like brushing your teeth, just making it a part of your routine.
Yeah. And, I think there's times to take a break from it. I think there's healthiness in having a free meal where you don't think about that stuff at all, going out with friends and making that a part of your plan so that it doesn't feel like you live in this food prison. I eat out twice a year and I don't have a huge social life right now. So it's not that challenging for me to
Hmm.
put my food on repeat like that. it's conducive for my life and my work and my kids. And I'd rather feel good and know that I'm eating in a way to get the results that I want than to have constant variety and like intuitively and fly by the seat of my pants. I think you get addicted to feeling good to the point where you're like, yeah, I could just not track my food, but I feel so much better in my workouts. I'm having better digestion. I'm sleeping better. My sex drive is
Mhm.
better. I like the
Mhm.
way I'm looking. And it becomes kind of like this feels better than not doing it. And you don't see that
Right.
when you're first starting. You just see, oh, this is annoying.
When you're starting anything new, that's something.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by absolutely no one. Just kidding. Not yet, anyway. But hey, if you like me to plug your business, brand, or product, DM me on Instagram at I'm Ovary It or email me at I'mOveryIt@gmail.com. I'll keep it real, make it funny, and actually make people listen. I promise. All right, Angela, we're back to you. When I think of protein, it means chicken breasts and chalky shakes. Boring, but from some of the suggestions that you've made earlier, there is some really good options. I wanted to get into strength training and hormones. Why is lifting weights suddenly that holy grail during menopause? I mean, I know we should be doing it before then, but specifically or especially now.
Well, kind of what we talked about earlier is we have this muscle mass, and we actually start contributing to that a lot younger than we think. And as a kid, you're not really thinking about getting protein in. Hopefully, your parents are helping you do that and build a healthy, supported lifestyle. Kids are a lot more serious about athletics now than they were when I was a kid. But the focus starts a lot younger, and strength training is so important because it signals to the body to either build that tissue or preserve the tissue. And we have to do a certain amount of it to maintain it. For instance, today I went into the gym to work out and I work out every set to failure, within 0 to 2 reps to failure. And a lot of women don't understand how to do that. A
Mhm.
lot of women I work with, I have them send me videos of their movements throughout their whole training program so I can watch how they're moving and what they look like. And this is no diss against them, but they don't know the strength that they have. They don't get that they can push a little closer to failure. So a lot of us don't. And when we don't do that, we're not challenging the tissue enough to cause a chemical reaction that will cause muscle to be built or preserved. So it doesn't happen.
Right.
We're doing a lot more things like HIIT workouts and cardio because it makes us sweaty. The Apple Watch says we burned like 800 calories, and that just
Right.
feels better. It feels more successful.
Mhm.
But back to more what you were saying, we start to lose that muscle mass about 1% every year. When we think of protein and strength training, this is like medicine. This is anti-aging medicine for the body to help us
Mhm.
hang on to that muscle mass so that we can have more appropriate hormonal balances. It's not to say that hormones aren't going to shift because they are. The reason our hormones start to decline is because our body recognizes that it's no longer important to reproduce. There's like a whole cycle of life. We were meant to be fertile into our 80s. We want to maintain our health and age as gracefully as possible, even when our hormones start to decline. So I actually just made a post last night about why do some women gain weight in perimenopause and some women don't. It's largely related to how much muscle they have. Because if hormone signaling starts to decline or become chaotic and they have a significant amount of muscle mass and they are eating in a balanced way, you're not going to have the same blood sugar spikes. Your body's going to dispose of glucose and use carbohydrates more effectively, which
Mhm.
means that you're not going to be storing it as fat. So those are
Right.
the main reasons, beyond the fact that if we do not, our body will leach mineral sources from our bones to try to keep us nourished, which leads to osteoporosis and osteopenia. Our balance and our gait becomes less effective, which leads to tripping and falling. And you hear about people breaking their hips. And I mean, this might be a
Mhm.
little further along the aging process than what we're talking about, but that's inevitable to what will come.
Yeah.
And not just that, our cognitive health and function is really reliant. Our muscles are like pumps. So they're pumps for a lot of different functions in the body that circulate nutrients that bring oxygenated blood to the brain. And if those pumps are small and they're not working and we're not working them very much, then we're going to have cognitive decline.
Mhm.
Along with that, if you're thinking about things like dementia and Alzheimer's, they are calling it the third diabetes. It's so connected to blood sugar regulation that the research on it's mind blowing now. So those are all
Yeah.
what I would consider beyond aesthetics, which is pretty important to a lot of people. Those are the other things I would look at when you're thinking about why should I strength train? Why can't I just maintain my shape by running? I'm a runner. I always stay thin
Yeah.
because I run. Well,
Yeah.
at some point, that's running is just going to, especially if you're not properly fueled or nourished, you won't maintain the muscle mass through running. You might maintain your weight, but you're going to start to look different. You're going to be softer.
And that's a thing I think a lot of women have in the back of their mind is cardio because the fitness industry has changed so much. We have all these different fitness routines come out over the years and they constantly change. So one of them is cardio, I think, is embedded in a lot of women's minds,
Mm.
especially as we're a little bit older. The younger generation are a little more balanced because of what's out there. The cardio, I think, is one thing that definitely still people get stuck in. So I wanted to circle. So just to quickly, in a day, what does that workout look like? A proper workout you would give to someone to do. Sometimes women think, oh my God, I have to lift weights for 2 hours, or there's that misconception of how much you have to do. Can you walk us through what a week looks like? How many days a week, essentially, do you recommend
Yeah.
to your clients?
Say that the majority of my clients are working out 4 times a week. I might have
Hmm.
some outliers that are doing more than that. And while
Yep.
cardio is important, we still want it to be a part of our life. The less movement, overall movement a person has, if you're sitting at a desk all day, the more cardio I'm going to prescribe you because overall we need to get you moving a little bit more than you
Right.
are if you're very sedentary.
Mm.
A lot of people who are getting 10 to 12,000 steps a day and for their goals and what they want, they don't really need to add a lot of cardio onto their sessions and they can get what they need in 3 or 4 sessions a week. I would say an hour in and out of the gym in an hour. I would,
That's doable.
yeah, totally. Like my personal workouts, they take an hour. They might take 15 minutes, give or take, depending on if someone's sitting on my piece of equipment or something. But you are less effective the longer you are there, especially in the case of building muscle, because the
Mhm.
most effective sets are the ones that are going to be earlier in your workout before you fatigue. If you're pushing to failure in sets, I want to also emphasize the importance of pushing to failure, but doing it mechanically correct because it doesn't help you recruit or build mechanical tension if you are doing the movement wrong. A lot of
And you
people,
could hurt yourself.
yeah, 100%. And we're not all of us do this for a career. I do, where I sit there and literally watch videos of people do this every day, and I can watch patterns. And before I worked in this, I worked in chiropractic in all spinal rehabilitation. So I know the moving parts really well. I understand
Yes.
how to look at compensation patterns and things that are happening that really start in the neck, not where you think they do. And there's so much to get into there, but my main thing is to say video yourself. Watch yourself move. Even if you don't know what you're doing. Even if you don't know how to look at that video and say, "Oh, I'm doing this right or wrong." It's going to create body awareness that is going to be really, really huge to you learning and growing as a mover. So that would be
Mhm.
one of my pieces of advice. Don't program too much. 4 to 5 movements in one workout, because if you
Okay.
do 4 to 5 movements, you're going to be able to hit the intensity with which you lift really, really well. Say you're doing a leg workout. You don't need to do 5 sets of 20. Try doing 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 and seeing how
Okay.
close to failure you can get within those repetitions. And then
Mhm.
as you increase your weight, go back to the beginning of that rep range. Say your rep range, you want to do 8 to 12 reps of one movement. Start with 8 reps and then do the movement a week after week and track your weights until you get to 12 reps. Then add more weight and go back to 8
Mhm.
reps. And think of it as a rep range that gives you a little more freedom to how to progress your weight instead of just adding weight every week, which isn't really realistic.
Right.
And then the other piece of advice I would say is to rest between your sets. This isn't a hit workout. We need you to rest so that you can properly actually lift to your full capacity. So 2 to 3 minutes between your sets if your goal is building muscle.
Okay. And then for the cardio mixes, recommend lifting weights maybe 3 to 4 times a week,
Yep.
mixed with it could be a brisk walk or what other kind of movements are go-to or favorites?
I would say the cardio doesn't really matter what you do. HIIT workouts are popular because you're being really efficient. While you could go for a run and burn 600 calories, I'm just throwing out numbers, in an
Mhm.
hour, You could do a HIIT workout with really high heart rate, and true HIIT is short but extremely high heart rate. You could burn the same amount in half an hour. So when you're looking at it from an efficiency standpoint, and the fact that we are not only concerned with the heart and the cardiovascular system, we're looking at increasing our overall burn through the day. Cardio is going to play a part in that, but there's so many other benefits to it. It doesn't really matter what you choose. We just got to get your heart rate up.
Okay.
There's a lot of a conversation about, is zone 2 cardio, meaning zone 2 would be a heart rate qualification between, depending on your age, and 20 to 140 beats per minute. So paying attention to heart rate, but I would say don't overcomplicate it as I complicate it. Get on the Stairmaster, do the elliptical, do an incline walk,
Yeah. Yeah.
do 20 to 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week.
What did your journey look like to get to where you are today? What motivated you?
That's a good question. I started becoming interested in fitness for mixed reasons. My house was really active growing up, but I developed an eating disorder pretty young. So as much as I was fueled kind of by an addiction, to be honest with you, it evolved because I realized it was an addiction, but it was also something I loved so much. And it's kind of like people who are addicted to food. It's a really hard addiction to break because you still have to eat every day. And the same thing was
Yes.
for me with exercise. Was I know this isn't healthy the way that I'm using it, but also I know this is a part of who I am. And I was born to move. I love to move. I'm really passionate about it. And so I really, in my own spiritual journey, I guess, asked God or the universe, whatever you want to call it, to help me turn that thing that was I had been using against myself into something good. And that's when I became obsessed with just learning. I went to school. I've studied under lots of different mentors. My actual formal education was not super expensive. Most of what I learned was from finding people that I really respected and paying them to teach me or working for them, reading tons of books and listening to podcasts.
It's the self-sabotage that we do to ourselves. And so I think it's turning that around to loving yourself and doing things that are good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I think moving is it's a spiritual thing. While we're still alive, our bodies and our spirit lives in our body. And so taking care of our spirit is also by taking care of our body.
It all goes hand in hand,
Yeah.
whether you're dancing, you're doing yoga, you're mixing in your weights, whatever that may look like.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a different thing that they like to do. I've seen firsthand what your motivation does. My sister started seeing you, it was November 2025. She had a massive transformation. She'd struggled for years after having 2 kids. She always was very, very fit. She also did personal training before she had the kids. And she knew what are good programs, what's good eating, but fell down that rabbit hole and was struggling and tried a bunch of different things that are out there, the different, diets or workout regimes, and it would work for a while and then not. Here we are over a year later, and she's still maintained and looks amazing.
She looks so great, and I loved working with her. She was such a great example of the women who they don't really know where to start and it's overwhelming, but the biggest thing I've focused on with her is prioritizing feeding herself. She didn't realize how often she was overlooking her needs and how that backfired against her. And so by prioritizing actually getting enough food, it changed her options and it led to less of her, I call it a side blowout, because when we don't eat and we don't feed ourselves and then we overeat and we overindulge and we snack on stuff that isn't as nutritionally dense for our bodies. But she maintained her consistency through all her kids' athletics, through everything that she had, and she had to travel a lot. And learning how to do her 1 foot grounded, she was able to stay successful. And I think it was more teaching a skill set of just, hey, it's okay, you got this, you can do this. And then it became more she didn't really need help being reminded. She grew and understood how to do that on her own.
Her husband, he was like, she really stuck to it. Those first 3 months, everything Angela said, she followed to the T. Very, very motivated to do this. It was really nice to see that that spark come back in her. And wrap up questions. What is your favorite go-to meal? I'll call it a cheat meal.
Well, I hate that word, but
I'm not cheating.
my favorite treat is cinnamon rolls. I have
Ooh,
this
that's a
thing
good
where
one.
I have qualifying factors, so I locally tried, especially when I was pregnant, I was on the search for the perfect one. So I've
Mhm.
tried so many different kinds, and I finally found like the one that I like the best. And now I've been trying to make them on my own, but they're still not up to snuff. So, but cinnamon roll, I think
Yeah,
would probably have to be my go-to like favorite treat.
that's a good one. What's a one gym myth you wish would die?
The gym myths surrounding HIIT workouts, because I want people to understand that HIIT, high intensity training, is fancy cardio. It's not true
Mhm.
strength training. And I have a lot of women who are like, yeah, yeah, I lift weights. And they're breathing like, I was going to say a bad word. They're breathing like,
Oh, you can say bad words on this podcast.
they're breathing like a motherfucker. They have no rest between their sets. They're jumping up and down and throwing around light weights. Some people get immediate results from that because they're just increasing their overall movement. That's the truth of it.
Mhm.
But when it comes to
Yeah.
actually building muscle, you need the rest between your sets. You need to push to actual failure. And I want to see slowing of reps, meaning you are trying to push and nothing's coming out in order for it to qualify as failing. And then you need to rest 2 to 3 minutes. Don't go do burpees between your sets or jumping lunges. That's not strength training. That's
Well,
fancy cardio.
you don't have to tell me twice.
I say that, and then I get annoyed at the people who are sitting there on their phones on their rest sets. And okay,
Oh,
are you done yet?
definitely, definitely wouldn't be doing that either. No, 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 no. No. And do you listen to music when you're working out?
Yeah, either listen to music or podcast.
Oh, okay. What is your favorite music jam that you listen to?
Well, I'm a millennial. I'm a prodigy of my environment. But I grew up with lots of different music selections. So when I was more into Olympic lifting, I would listen to film score. It was music with no words. Max Richter was my favorite producer. It's not classical music, it's soundtracks to movies. It's
Okay.
very dramatic. That was my favorite because it allowed me to really think when I was doing more technical lifting. And then
Right.
when I was into CrossFit and more high intensity training, things like that, it was just inappropriate hip hop. Now I have kids, so my playlist on my phone, it's a random assortment of 99 Nights in the Forest and some weird 6-7 song and
Baby Shark.
yeah, yes. But I do enjoy it all. I do like a lot of
Okay.
variety.
Yeah. Variety is the spice of life, as I say,
That's right.
so it doesn't get stale. And podcasts. You said you listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
What's your go-to when you're working
Oh,
out?
well, that's gonna change a lot. I really like Kyle Kingsbury. He has a podcast I enjoy, the Joe Rogan Experience.
Oh, Joe Rogan.
Um,
Yeah.
Cameron Haynes. He's an ultra runner and a bow hunter. He's a podcast I listen to. Those are
Okay.
probably my top three. Yeah.
Amazing. And then now you'll be adding I'm Over It
Yeah.
to
Now I
yours
can add
too.
this.
Well, thank you so much. That was all some serious food for thought. Literally.
Literally.
Um, a lot to, like I said, a lot to think about, but it is, once you break it down, I think it's not as bad as we think it is. Thank you for breaking down a little bit of that mystery and protein and why our muscles need more love than ever during this roller coaster of hell, as I call it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you do take one thing away from today, it's this: you're not broken, you're just biochemically betrayed, and protein and movement with a bit of grace can make a world of difference. If you found this conversation lit a fire under you, or at least made things finally make a little bit of sense, Angela's extending something special for listening today. It's a free 3-day workout plan plus a 45-minute one-on-one strategy session where she'll help you define your goals, give you a clear, realistic blueprint to put it all into action. And to get this, just DM her on her Instagram at Angela Holmes Fitness, and be sure to use the code I'm Over It so she knows that you heard it here. Or you can message me at I'm Over It, and I'll forward it on to Angela. So thank you again. That wraps up today's episode.
Thank you, Emily.
Just new starting out on doing this, and I'm really liking it. So thank you for being my first interview.
Oh, my pleasure.
Coming up next, I'm flying solo for an episode called Sleep Hell, because if you know, you know. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, stay fabulous, stay real, and stay cool.